Hi, everybody. So before I get started with my story, I want to dedicate my story to the TV generation, my generation, Generation X, and to the man who raised us when we were home, sick from school, during the day. The incomparable, legendary host of The Price is Right, Mr. Robert William Barker. So raise your glasses up for the recently deceased Mr. Bob Barker. So you heard the first line. I was homesick from school one day in the third grade at 8 years old, and my mother plopped down on our lush shag carpet that covered our living room floor, and she asked me out of nowhere if I knew where babies came from. The show had just started, and contestants were just being picked for my favorite show at the time. I believe that she chose this time because she thought she would have my full attention, but in all reality, I feel like I learned everything that I needed to know about where babies came from. While Susan from Buffalo gingerly hopped up on stage next to Bob Barker and his beauties, which is all I knew at the time about the birds and the bees, my mother explained to me that when two people are really, really in love, when two people really, really love each other, they wait to have sex until they're legally married in a church, preferably by a priest or a pastor, with both immediate and non-immediate family flanking both the bride and the groom, followed by a reception that was flush with alcohol and dancing, and really, really good times. So I now know that when two people really, really love each other, they get married before they have sex, but I'll never know the actual retail price of those golf clubs, which is the real tragedy here. My mother, in her infinite wisdom, went on to explain that when these two people who really, really love each other get married, and then they have their reception, they then go on this thing called a honeymoon. And on this trip, these two people have sex. I didn't care at the time in my 8-year-old brain what body part went into whichever other body part. All I cared about is which cash prizes Susan from Buffalo's Plinko chip fell into. Like, that's really all I cared about at the time. But now, thanks to my mother and her infinite wisdom, I know that somewhere in a timeshare in Orlando, I guess, these two people, consummate the marriage, and that's great. So legal marriage, sex, which is fine now, and now here we are at the big wheel when Lance from Buffalo, or rather Baltimore, I'm sorry, they can't both be from Buffalo. When Lance from Baltimore spun the big wheel, I will never know what number he scored on that big wheel to score a chance at the legendary Showcase Showdown against the formidable Susan. I know that when two people love each other, they have sex, then there's wedding, there's the reception, and after that, my mother told me while Lance was spinning that on this honeymoon, the two people who love each other very, very much have sex and get pregnant, and then in 9 months, the woman becomes a mommy. But the real tragedy here is that I will never know who won the Showcase Showdown, the legendary Showcase Showdown, the end of The Price is Right, right? I will never know if it was Lance or if it was Susan who won the brand new VCR, the brand new motorcycle, the brand new Lazy Boy recliner, the all expenses paid trip to Aruba, and the limited edition high top British Knights. All I know is that whichever of them won, I hope they invited the other to Aruba, and I hope they traveled around the island of Aruba on their motorcycle with Susan's arms tightly wrapped around Lance's waist. I hope they fell in love, and I hope they got married, and I hope they recorded their first time doing it in their brand new Lazy Boy recliner so they could watch it on their brand new VCR later during another bout of sex. And that I hope Susan got pregnant on this trip and that their child inherited those 6 British Knights. And I hope that you rest in peace in that big game show in outer space. Bob Barker, thank you for babysitting me. And that's my story.